Today's video is going to answer this question. If God is omnipresent as light with no darkness at all, then how is it possible for us to ever exist with darkness all around us? This paradox is reconciled through the knowledge that what we call darkness and what we call light are actually both light in two different forms, because darkness is the true nature of light, meaning that it's technically wrong for us to say that darkness is the absence of light, when in reality darkness is the front half of light, while what we call light is actually the back half of light, being a wave of energy to illuminate said darkness. Or in other words, God can exist as light with no darkness at all, simply because darkness is the front half of light. I sincerely hope that you enjoy this short yet informative video, and if you do, please hit the like button, and also subscribe to my channel in order to hear teachings that you will not find anywhere else. Even better, please share this video with others in order to help spread the word that the kingdom of God is at hand. Thank you for watching. Something is wrong, only we haven't realized it yet. We like to say that darkness is the absence of light, yet how is it possible for us to have the darkness which we see while in the presence of an omnipresent God who is light with no darkness at all? After all, common sense dictates that we shouldn't have any darkness whatsoever. So how is it possible for us to reconcile this discrepancy? Fortunately, science has discovered how light is actually created, which in turn reconciles our discrepancy for us. Before going any further, know that Chris Woodford has a great, short, and simple article on how light is created, which can be found at the attached address, as I will paraphrase some of his article as well as expound upon it. But using my own words, know that what we call darkness and what we call light are both light in two different forms. But how? In short, energy excites darkened atoms into producing and releasing the photons of light which we can see, and in turn reveals that light exists in these two stages. First, what we call darkness, being the default state of darkened atoms. Second, what we call light, being the excited state of atoms that emit the photons needed in order to illuminate said darkness. Having said that, consider these three quotes. Albert Einstein said, "Light must be regarded as behaving like both an undulating wave and a stream of particles," while Max Planck said, "Light actually came in packets of energy," while Nikola Tesla had stated, "Darkness, which is the true nature of light." Now it's common knowledge that the only thing the human eye is capable of seeing is light, meaning we're unable to see objects, but rather we see the light that is reflected off of those objects. Which would lead one to wonder, how are we able to see the beam of a flashlight if that beam isn't reflected off of anything? But it does. As the flashlight's beam reflects off of darkened atoms, which absorb the beam's energy in order to instantaneously produce and emit photons, that in turn bring forth the illumination of the flashlight beam that we see. While in conjunction with that, the darkness that surrounds that flashlight beam exists as infinite darkened atoms which the energy from that flashlight had neither passed through nor excited. In turn, that flashlight beam reveals our two stages of light. The first being the surrounding darkness, being the original default state of darkened atoms which that beam had neither passed through nor excited. The second being the flashlight's beam of light that we see, which had excited all those atoms in its path to produce and release the photons needed by which to instantaneously bring forth the beam's illumination of darkness. In short, that's all that light as we know it is, the illumination of darkness, thus making darkness an illusion of our perceptions. Now, in order to better understand that, imagine holding a blank sheet of white copy paper that's void of pen or pencil markings. Next, imagine placing that blank sheet of copy paper under a UV light and then suddenly seeing words appear, as those words had been written with invisible ink, meaning that those words had always been present but not always revealed to you, as it took that UV light to make those words visible to your human eyes. with the point being that just because you couldn't see those words prior to the UV light did not mean that those words did not exist, but rather they simply hadn't been revealed to you yet. So too is your perception of darkness, meaning that just because you cannot see the light in the midst of your darkness doesn't mean that light isn't present, but rather it simply hasn't been revealed to you yet through its illumination of itself. Next, consider epoxy glue. One tube of epoxy glue is comprised of two halves. When you push down on the plunger, both halves come out in a mix of epoxy glue, with these two halves being a resin and a hardener. However, know that the resin is just as much the epoxy glue as is the hardener, and vice versa, as it takes a mixture of both for the epoxy glue to be formed. So, what does all of this have to do with darkness being an illusion of our perceptions? Because just as epoxy glue is comprised of two halves, and just as invisible ink needs UV light in order to be revealed, so too is light as we know it comprised of two parts that are needed in order for the light to reveal itself through its own illumination. This being via the photons that those darkened atoms are able to create. With these two parts once again being, one, what we call darkness, being the default state of darkened atoms. Second, what we call light, being the illuminated state of those previously darkened atoms. Or, as Nikola Tesla had stated, darkness, which is the true nature of light. With these things having been said, we can now expand our definition of our two stages of light to be, first, what we call darkness is actually the default state of non-illuminated atoms, being what Max Planck had referred to as invisible packets of energy, meaning that darkness is the true nature of light. Second, what we call light, being excited atoms that release the necessary photons which bring forth the illumination of said darkness, and in turn empower us with sight. With that said, let's do another mental experiment using a light switch. Off. We perceive darkness to be absent of light, when in reality darkness is the true nature of light because darkness is comprised of darkened atoms, being the original default state of light. On. We perceive light because the energy from the light bulb has excited those previously darkened atoms in order to produce and release the necessary photons that in turn bring forth the illumination of said darkness. Off. We once again perceive darkness because the loss of light bulb energy has caused those previously excited atoms to instantaneously revert back into their original default state of darkness, once again being the true nature of light. Obviously, it's the light switch that controls the energy needed by which to either excite those darkened atoms in order to make them visible through their illumination or release photons, being what we call light, or revert back into their original default state of darkened atoms, being what we call darkness. This in turn reveals light's default state of darkness to be omnipresent, though not omni-revealed. With all that having been said, have you ever heard a preacher say that when the light comes, darkness flees? Well, I wonder, how does darkness flee and where does it go? After all, darkness has no legs, wings, nor physical body whatsoever, meaning that darkness is static, motionless, as darkness never moves and is ever present even during the very brightest of sunlit days. But how? To better understand that, imagine standing inside of a large, steel-enclosed walk-in refrigerator with the door closed. As you stand inside that walk-in refrigerator, all you see is darkness. However, as with our invisible ink experiment, just because you cannot see the light does not mean that light is not present. It just hasn't been revealed to you yet. Turn on the light switch. Now you believe that you can see, but what you don't understand is that the very same atmosphere of darkness which you had seen prior to turning the light on is still present after you turn the light on, as darkness never fled, nor did darkness ever leave the room. In fact, only one thing had changed. The darkened atoms in that walk-in had simply absorbed the energy from the light bulb in order to create and release the photons needed by which to illuminate that room, being what we call light, and in turn reveals that the original state of darkness had never left that room. How do I know that? Simple. This time imagine standing in that closed-in walk-in refrigerator with the light on. As you look around, all you see is light, as there isn't any darkness present. However, just because you can't see darkness doesn't mean darkness isn't present. It's just that the darkness hasn't been revealed to you yet. Since your body blocks the wave of light from the light bulb, just look around to find your shadow. Yet, what is a shadow? Shadows exist as the room's original state of darkness, being the original default state of darkened atoms that aren't illuminated through their release of photons. However, if you move, know that light does not fill the place where your shadow had been, but rather energy had excited those previously darkened atoms to release and illuminate photons, and in turn cause your shadow to disappear. Which means that any lighted room will always coexist with what we call light and shadows, as shadows will always exist as areas in which the original default state of darkness is present, as the original default state of darkness is simply nothing more than darkened atoms that do not release photons and in turn are not illuminating. Therefore, in closing, I hope you're able to see how our omnipresent God is able to exist as light with no darkness at all, because what we call darkness and what we call light are both light in two different forms, as what we call darkness is really the default state of light, while what we call light is really the illumination of said darkness through the release of photons, thus revealing light to be omnipresent, though not omni-revealed, as darkness is simply an illusion of our perceptions.